This one applies to any of you who compete in basically any sport, okay? Or even on a recreational kind of level. Once your lifting technique is good enough, once your capabilities for that sport is good enough, you don't need to look to add more complexity to it and make it better. Not just yet, okay? Obviously, as a beginner, up to a certain point, you do need to make sure your technique is right, it's efficient, it's correct, and so on. But once you reach a certain level where the technique is more than enough, you don't need to continue to look for sharpening the technique or looking for hacks in technique. I'm just using technique as an example because it's such a prevalent thing, especially amongst powerlifters. Let me explain what I mean. The issue these days seems to be that people are looking to learn more and more of the information that's out there. And I mean, thankfully, in many ways, it's an age where there is so much more information readily available and for free. Okay, some of it good, some of it crap. That's for another discussion. Instead, what I think should be emphasized is to know enough and be skilled enough in key areas that make the biggest difference. The areas that really make the biggest difference. You need to be an athlete who can reliably knock those couple of key skills out the park every single time. Let me give you a story to illustrate what I mean. A long time ago, at the University of Virginia, they decided to measure and find out the determinants of what the highest paying golfers are on a PGA tour. So what is it that the highest paid golfers, the best golfers, do that makes them the highest paid golfers, right? And in essence, the best golfers. So they analyzed every stat of every single player. They put it into a computer so they can analyze it. You name it, from the length of the drive to the number of strokes, all of that stuff. By the time it was all said and done, after the computer spat out the results, they found that the only difference between a high earning golfer and a low earning golfer was that the high earning golfers made 1 to 2 less putts per round every round. Okay, they did one super simple cornerstone factor of golf really well, really consistently. They weren't adding like all these complexities to their game. They weren't like these super sophisticated golfers or anything like that. They just made less putts. They were just really good at making less putts per game, every game, again and again, reliably, consistently. What I see nowadays in powerlifting, for example, is people trying to figure out the latest trick on how to slide less on the bench press, how to have their rib cage in the correct position on the squat, on the deadlift, when their bench press is already at high level, when their squat is already at a high level, when their deadlift is already at a high level. They're capable of doing high level shit already, but they're just trying to squeeze percentages here and there when that's not where the deficiency really is. When they turn up to comps and they pick attempts that are ridiculous, like they're missing their first attempt, they're missing their second attempt, and now for the third attempt, they're in panic mode and they have to pick an attempt just to stay in the game, right? Whereas they should have made the first attempt, gone on to a better, logical second attempt, and knocked it out of the park with a third attempt. So now they finish on a total that gives them fourth place, or maybe even they bomb out, for example. And this happens on a regular basis, by the way. This isn't like an anomaly. This isn't a rarity. It happens on a regular basis, all of this stuff that I'm saying. And so they consistently have bad competitions, regardless of how their ribcage positioning was on their squats and how much less they slid on a bench press and what their ribcage positioning or feet angle were on their deadlift. They still finished in a position that wasn't reflective of their capabilities on the day. So I'm not saying that attempt selection is the equivalent of the putting example I just gave. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I don't know. What I am saying though is instead of trying to add complexity to your game, figure out what are the things that make the biggest difference to your game and start making sure that you consistently hit those things time and time again so that you can actually get the results where it counts. Ultimately, if you are a competitor of any sport, whether you're a competitive powerlifter, strongman, weightlifting, wrestling, boxing, whatever it is, the results that matter are the results on competition day. It doesn't matter how much you lifted in training. If you can't put it together on comp day, basically you failed your job. And all those months of training basically goes down the drain. This, by the way, isn't exclusive to like strength sports or powerlifting or whatever. This concept of doing a couple of things really well applies everywhere, right? All top level, all the greatest competitors, the greatest athletes in their respective field in the world, if you have a look at it, they actually don't really have complexity. They're capable of doing complex things, but that's not what makes their game. I'll give you like another example myself personally. Like obviously alongside powerlifting, I do wrestling. In the wrestling world, there are top level guys where they are known. It's a topic of conversation. It's almost like a running joke around the circles, where so and so, who is this elite level wrestler at world level, just does two things really well. And even though people know he's going to make that move, he's going to come for that technique, there's nothing they can do to stop him. He's that good at it. He is so well versed and so efficient and proficient at executing that particular skill that nobody can stop him, even though they know that that's what he's going to do. For those of you who watch MMA, for example, the UFC, if you remember back to one of the competitors, Khabib, every competitor knows when they go up against him, he's going to try and wrestle and get the fight to the ground. Everybody knew this. They knew that this is his game plan. He wouldn't even bother changing his game plan for different opponents. Yet nobody could stop him because he was so dominant in being able to do those simple things really, really well. So I just think that that's something that needs to be said and needs to be brought out, because many years ago, this wasn't such a problem because information wasn't so readily available. Nowadays, information is very readily available. And because it's so easily accessible, and naturally we have this tendency as competitor in any sport to want to get better in that sport, we think logically that the more we know, the better we're going to be because we know more than our competitor. That's not the case. You just need to figure out what are the key things that make the biggest difference to your game and get really, really good at that and do it again and again, and that's how you get better.